Speaking of music and the music that is mariachi, what are the building blocks of mariachi music, musically speaking, for those of us that aren't, music folks? Susie?
Well, I think again, like I just spoke about, the real tradition that came, all the way back in the 20th century were strings. The in Tecalitlan, Vargas, Mariachi Vargas started with a harp, a violin, uh, um, probably a guitarra de golpe. It might not have even been, a guitar. I'm not a musicologist, so Tammy might have more better, references than that. But we know that it was a stringed ensemble. So the bass may originally have been even played by the harp. We don't really, nobody really knows, right? Where did mariachi come from? It's sort of an oral tradition. So there's a long it's a lineage of how this music came to be. But for sure, the pillars, as we know a mariachi today, it's like if you don't have a guitarrón, a bass, you lose the heart of the mariachi. It's like really where you feel, that strong pulse of the sound. And then you have your classical guitar, a vihuela, that's very important. It's like it's almost like the drum session the drums in a band, a big band. Like you can't feel that rock and beat without that drum set, and that's the vihuela. And then some people have a guitarra de golpe. Sometimes Las Colibrí has a guitarra de golpe, which is another 5-string, kind of looks like a vihuela. It's a little bit longer. And then your violin section, and if you're lucky, you have a harp player. Female harp players are hard to find, but there's a lot of harp players out there, and it really kind of rounds out that sound to make it nice and beautiful. And then you have your trumpets that just like dominate that mariachi. But those are really the pillars. And then you have your genres, and maybe Oscar could talk about that a little bit, but the types of kind of songs, or typically musically how, what types of songs we play.
Actually, yeah. Can we bring in Tammy to add on, and then Oscar?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much, Susie, for starting us off, right? And, I was just thinking about how much, just thinking in the context of world music, right? And we think about colonization as far as like the history of Mexico, and how instruments gets transferred over to Mexico, or, parts of the United States, or parts of some regions in Mexico. The instruments get, in a way, transported, right? And then, so historically speaking, but if we think about how mariachi is formed, it's very much, and in the context of world music, it does come from like an indigenous roots, right? Because the whole purpose of performing, if we look at even other parts of the world, not just in Mexico, if we look at other parts of the world, traditionally speaking, of how folk music was performed, and how music performance was performed, or how orally was how we transfer knowledge and oral transitions, right? How we transfer that traditionally into our family. That has a lot to do with the upbringing of the music. And so when we think about the way we perform mariachi, it's not necessarily like the way that it currently is today, right? This is a different type of representation of how it once used to be, right? In a way that, I think Oscar, shared this with my students very recently, about how the media had huge influence into the way that mariachi was shaped and formed. But originally, it was coming from many different parts of Mexico, and many different regions. And how it was performed, it was traditionally performed as just for family gatherings, celebrations, in a very spontaneous way. And then I think it kind of took over once like media hit, right, Oscar? Do you want to expand on those details?
Yeah, sure. So like Susie said, nobody really knows where mariachi comes from. There's a reason why we call it folk music, right? It's folklore. It's music that's been passed through the people, by the people, and for generations and generations. Nobody like wrote it in the books. It's just something that's just been passed down orally. To say like where mariachi comes from, like there isn't really an answer. It comes from everywhere. Mariachi obviously is very influenced by European music. Obviously, a guitar didn't come from Mexico, trumpets didn't come from Mexico. Like it was basically what we call in Spanish a mestizo type of ensemble. Mestizo meaning that it's mixed of European and indigenous cultures. But even in mariachi itself, when you listen to mariachi music, there's influences that you hear, like German ancestry, you hear like European, I guess. There's even Colombian ancestry. Like when you look at different genres, for example, in mariachi music, we play what we call cumbias. Cumbias is not Mexican. Cumbias is Colombian, right? So mariachi is everywhere. It's just from everywhere. If you look at rancheras, what we call like ranchera music, which is a different type of form or different type of style or genre within mariachi, kind of like how jazz has like fusion, pop, or like bebop, big band, like kind of like how jazz has their own eras and genres, mariachi has their own. When you look at rancheras, when you hear a 3/4 ranchera, you can't help but think waltzes like Strauss. When you hear a 2/4 ranchera, you can't stop but think, oh, this sounds kind of German, like same with polkas. When you hear a polka, it sounds very German. Again, mariachi is not like completely Mexican. There's a lot of European descent from everywhere. And there isn't one particular part of Mexico where mariachi comes from. It comes from every single region of Mexico, every single town, every single corner influenced mariachi to what we hear today. But that's the beauty of it. You just get this composition or this composite material from like influences everywhere, and we end up with what we call mariachi. So yeah, it's just a beautiful thing to hear and really appreciate.